small amounts cut up into dishes in which there's a great abundance of vegetables as well. We don't do that. We like dense portions of meat, and many people in our culture, if you didn't serve them a dense portion of meat, would wonder where the main course was. We think of that as the centerpiece of how we eat. Where's the beef? Milk and milk products are another major source of protein, and they have been heavily promoted by the dairy industry as healthy sources of calcium lifelong. I'm not so sure about that. Milk and milk products have several strikes against them. The first is that the sugar in milk is indigestible by many people in the world who are lactose intolerant. And to tell all people that milk should be a basic ingredient of human nutrition simply doesn't work for a large percentage of the world's population. The fat in milk is the most saturated fat in the diet. So in a sense, it's worse than the fat in meat, because it's a higher percentage of saturated fatty acids, and something I think you need to be careful of. Cheese is probably one of the major source of saturated fat in the American diet. That doesn't mean you should not eat any cheese. Cheese is included in the Mediterranean diet, but in modest amounts. It's not something that's eaten every day in very large quantities. Some animal foods are fine, but it is good to explore the world of vegetable protein. And if you look there, I think that learning about soybeans and soy foods is excellent. There are many, many benefits to soy. If you're not yet friends with tofu or tempeh, it's good to do that. So in summary, you need carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in your diet in the right proportions, the right kinds and right amounts of these macronutrients. Thanks. Let's look at some of the diets out there that experts have said might be the optimum diet for all of us. The first one is the Paleolithic diet. There are a surprising number of experts who say that everything back in the Stone Age was wonderful, and that people were much healthier and eating much better than we are today. This is seriously advanced as a thesis. I think, first of all, it's very difficult to interpret this because probably in those days people were not living nearly as long as people are today, so they didn't really have a chance to develop the degenerative diseases that we do. There must have been very high rates of premature death from accidental injury, from deliberate injury, from infection and so forth. But that diet was very different from the modern diet. Principally, it was a low-carbohydrate diet because agriculture had not been invented, so there weren't cereal grains. So people were mostly eating game, maybe some wild tubers and fruits and nuts if they got them, fowl, fish, and so forth. So it was probably much higher in protein, much lower in carbohydrate than the modern diet. It was much better in essential fatty acids because the animal foods that these people were eating were animals that grazed on wild plants that provided these essential fatty acids. And it was also a principal advantage of it was that it was very, very low or absent in refined or processed foods. And I think, the more that I've looked at when you think about what's good, what's bad looks like processing. In almost every category of food, the more we take it and mess with it, the more we refine it, the more we destroy its inherent healthful qualities and increase problems with it. So that's the great virtue of the Paleolithic diet. But I don't see Paleolithic cuisine becoming the fast food of tomorrow. And I don't agree with people who say, as some people do, that the invention of agriculture was the beginning of the road to ruin. This thesis is also out there. There are many people who try to say that the domestication of cereal plants led to huge increases in human populations, tremendous impact on blood sugar and insulin levels that created a lot of modern diseases, but also allowed populations to reach densities where urbanization became possible, and this was the beginning of all social ills, including maldistribution of wealth and inequality of the sexes and so forth. So, that's an interesting thesis. I don't really believe that. I think agriculture has its virtues, and being a botanist and plant lover, I think that the domestication and human cultivation of plants has many positive attributes. And I think that these cereal grains, if they're used in better forms, meaning less processed, less refined, not turned into this infinitely pulverized stuff with huge surface areas that makes all of this kind of fluffy, these fluffy products out there. I think they're great. So again, chewy, grainy, dense breads, that stuff is fine. Pasta in moderate quantities that's cooked so it offers resistance to the teeth. These foods do not have destructive effects on blood sugar if they're eaten in reasonable quantities. Another diet that has been advocated as being optimum is a raw foods diet. You know, if the Paleolithic diet was great, why not even go further back before the invention of cooking? There are people that say that cooking destroys all the healthful properties of food. Here's one that I really don't agree with. There are several problems with eating only raw food. One of them is that many of the healthful elements in food become available or much more available to the body after cooking. And just as an example, carotenoid pigments in fruits and in vegetables are not very available to the body in raw forms. That doesn't mean you should never eat raw carrots, but cooked carrots are a much, much better source of carotenoids. So you want to eat a mix of raw and cooked foods. And I think this is, you know, something you see in many categories of food. In addition, there are a number of toxins in nature, in plants. And most of these toxins, these are natural toxins. Most of these natural toxins are easily broken down or destroyed by cooking. So not only are you not getting everything that your body needs from all raw foods, but you might be getting too much of things that your body doesn't want. So I think cooking I don't think that food should be entirely cooked either. We should eat a mix of raw and cooked foods. I don't think an all raw foods diet is an optimum diet. Another diet that has been advanced as being optimum is a vegan diet. That is one in which there are no animal products. You can't get all of the elements that you need on a vegan diet. A principal problem is vitamin B12, which is necessary for normal function of the bone marrow and normal nerve function. B12 is only found in animal products, and if you eat a diet devoid of animal products, sooner or later you will develop B12 deficiency, which can be very serious. To me, that's a sign that that's not what we're meant to do. I have had some very delicious vegan food. I think that, you know, if food is prepared skillfully, you can make very tasty dishes with no animal products, but I don't think many people in our culture are going to find that a reasonable way to eat all the time. So I would say that's not a good candidate for the optimum diet. Another diet that I have looked at a lot is the traditional Japanese diet. Now, I have to say here that that phrase is a little problematical because the traditional Japanese diet probably only existed for a very short period of time. Before World War II, Japanese were eating insufficient protein. They were really not eating that many fresh vegetables. They were eating mostly pickled vegetables. That was not the optimal diet. And today, most Japanese are shifting to eating Western food. So there was a very narrow window in which we call the traditional Japanese diet existed. But in principle, I think it's great. This is a diet that very unusual in having such a low percentage of fat, about 10% fat, and being tasty. Now, as I said, it's very hard to do that with Western food, but the Japanese have managed to do that. The principal carbohydrate is rice, which may offer great advantages over white flour. You know, because, again, these are grains, and I think one reason why Asian people may not see the kind of obesity that we see here is that they're not eating their carbohydrate in finely pulverized form. The Japanese diet relies on fish as a major source of protein. There's heavy inclusion of soy at almost all meals. There's an incredible variety of vegetables, you know, very good fruit in season, sea vegetables, which are sources of omega-3 fatty acids. Green tea is a principal beverage with all of its protective effects. Very interesting things we could learn from that. However, I don't think the Japanese diet is that transportable, except to Japanese restaurants. You know, for one thing, it includes a number of very strange foods that Westerners would find difficult to accept, and also it's very labor-intensive. You know, it takes a lot of work to prepare Japanese food. So it's fine to eat in restaurants, but I can't see too many people doing this at home. But I think there are principles of the Japanese diet that we could take and use, such as incredible variety, great, you know, really especially a great variety of vegetables, inclusion of wild vegetables, sea vegetables, soy, green tea. Also, I would say artful presentation of food. I think Japanese food is certainly the most visually appealing and appealing to the senses of any cuisine. You know, that Japanese dishes are works of art and fun. I mean, that certainly is a principle that we could adapt. I think also interesting in the traditional Japanese diet, there's really very little sweet stuff. You know, the Japanese don't go for sweet, rich desserts. Their main sweet is sweetened red bean paste or fruit. You know, nothing like the